biogeometry, as the name implies, there's bio and there's geometry. We all know what geometry is, except that it's not the geometry we learned at school. There's no theorems, there's no measurements with rulers and things like that. It's like biogeometry in the sense of shape.
Okay.
Of shape.
Yeah.
And bio life. That means basically how shapes affect our life. But if we really have to look at it as a subject, that is the practical application, that you learn how to use shapes, how to use forms that have a dramatic impact on our life in terms of bringing about harmony. But as a study, one could say it's the study of energy and shape. Shape exists everywhere. Energy is everything. Everything is energy, whether we're talking about thoughts, whether we're talking about matter, and therefore the interaction of shape and energy. But our main concern in biogeometry is not just any shape, but specifically producing shapes or using form that produces what we call qualities of harmony, the harmonizing qualities of nature, in fact, which can then have a profound impact on, for example, harmonizing spaces or harmonizing ourselves and our lives, our benefits, our loved ones, etc.
Okay. So we can use it in the home, in work.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the beautiful thing of it, is that it has widespread applications. Whether one is just a lay person, so to speak, who simply wants to improve his or her life and that of their family and those around them, or whether one, and there are also applications for which are very relevant for specific fields of work. So, for example, in all our courses we usually have architects. The founder of biogeometry, who I haven't yet mentioned, Dr. is in fact an architect, and it came from that lineage because obviously an architect can have a way of integrating certain shapes, certain angles, certain proportions, which create these harmonizing qualities in the space. Therefore, it is very instrumental for architecture.
Yeah.
Right? And designers, similarly designers, there are certain rules, if you like, in biogeometry which can apply equally whether one is designing a house or a logo for that matter. But applying certain guidelines would result in producing the harmonizing qualities in that design. Again, whether it's a logo, a building, or a furniture, whatever.
So the applications are
very vast.
Very vast.
Very vast, yes. And in fact, right now, well, in biogeometry we talk a lot about many successful experiments and projects that have been done. We've had projects, for example, where Dr. Karim very successfully in Switzerland harmonized villages that were suffering from the effects of electromagnetic radiation due to certain factors, certain antennas that were set up. And this was a serious case because many people were experiencing very detrimental effects. But quite amazingly, just by using, again, remember, nothing electronic, just by using the power of shape, managed to harmonize them. We've had successful experiments in the fields, for instance, of agriculture and animal husbandry, where without using antibiotics or hormones, produce could grow, or animals could grow in less time, with less effort, with less expense, basically. Again, simply by using these simple principles which have ancient origins. Dr. Karim's work is quite widespread even right now. There are many exciting projects which will hopefully be announced in the near future, which again build on these exact applications that I am mentioning.
So the subject matter sounds very vast.
Mm-hmm.
How do you start going down the road about finding more about biogeometry?
Well, thankfully, we're now in a position that we have these seminars going on in Europe. Right now, there are several countries that biogeometry is taught. Originally, Dr. Karim used to obviously teach this subject in Cairo, where it is still nationally taught and where there are many people even doing it at postgraduate level. It's very popular in North America and Canada, but thankfully now we have the courses, and I'm teaching several courses in Europe. I'm teaching in the UK, we just concluded this course with you organizing it, thankfully. We've had Germany, we've had Switzerland, Malta. I've organized courses even in Malta, and again plan to do so, and even South Africa. South Africa, actually, I've got also quite a good nucleus of very enthusiastic students, and courses are happening over there. If one is interested, the best way is to check the official biogeometry invention. It really is based on ancient principles, which
Yeah.
ancient people knew and have used in their temples especially, and their buildings for thousands of years, but which today we have largely, I would say, almost lost because
It's
of
kind
the
of lost touch.
yes, because of the very rational approach that we've taken, which eliminates certain other uses that are not part of our paradigm. But thankfully, as research is showing, it is a very valid science, one that is achieving major inroads in certain areas of research.
So who can come to biogeometry? Is there any prerequisites, or can anybody come to the foundation?
Anybody. There are no prerequisites at all, other obviously than a desire to learn the subject, an interest and curiosity about this. I tend to find that these are people who come very often, just start to read about it and suddenly feel drawn to it. They say, I have to learn this. There are no prerequisites. One doesn't need to have any particular experience. The techniques we learn and the concepts are all, they can be learned by anyone. Although we refer to it as a science, I want to make it clear, it has nothing to do with learning physics at school or anything like that. There are no formulas, there are, no, nothing. But we still call it a science because it's not just a set of techniques. There really is a very real science, about the science of quality, what we call the physics of quality. That, again, it's not as complicated as it sounds, it's just a way of understanding the phenomena of life around us and how they all interact into one coherent and holistic whole.
Yeah. I mean, we've just finished the class here, and the breadth of different people that we've had here
Yeah, it was quite something, yes.
quite
Quite something. We've had, as you were saying yourself, ranging from the lay persons, we've had holistic therapists, we've had architects, we've had doctors, we have people who travel from the Far East,
Yeah,
from
the other
Europe,
side of the
from the other
planet.
side of the planet, from around the corner, literally because down the road, So yes, it's every seminar. This is what I always enjoy. It's a
Yeah.
conglomerate of different people, all coming from different aspects and for different reasons.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the common grounds to all, the underlying common theme really is that people live with a new paradigm of life, which is very often an aha. I remember one person came from the financial sciences and was just telling me how he said this has seriously changed my life.
Yeah.
Because it gives you a new paradigm that goes way beyond the limitations of the paradigm that we're normally brought up in, which is obviously extremely limited. It's limited only to the material world, for instance, and yet.
And we're so attached to
Oh,
that.
absolutely. And yet, when we start to really take a look at reality, even from a modern scientific point of view, what the quantum physicists say, there are so many levels, there are so many facets of reality, and yet it is like we're blinkered, we only see this little bit, and
Yeah.
from it we construct all our reality and think we know everything.
Yeah, that's how it is.
That's it. Far from it, once one expands, one realizes there are other realms beyond the physical, and this is the beauty of biogeometry. Through the skills that we learn, we can actually learn to work with levels beyond the physical. So, it's reaching the invisible world of it, and in this way being able to produce amazing effects and bring about harmony in one space.
Yeah.
Whether you have your home or your office, you can actually balance it out, as we call it,
Yeah.
harmonize it rather, even by simple shapes, by simply using balance of colors, certain numbers,
Yeah.
certain forms, angles, alignment of things, which creates a certain
Yeah.
harmony, as you very well know, because I know you sit yourself all the time.
Yeah, and I love the simplicity of it. It often feels like we're not doing very much, but it is very simple and really effective. And for little to no cost, you can actually
Yes.
implement the tools once you
Absolutely.
understand them.
In fact, that means that it's no exaggeration to say, and I know that Karina, the founder, would probably agree with me on this, that one of the biggest problems we have, to call it, for want of a better word, one of the biggest challenges that we have is actually to convince people of biogeometry, because it is so simple. It seems that people are trained to think that if something is complex, if something costs a lot of money, or if something has that's mine, If something has a degree of complexity, then it works. But
Yeah.
for something as simple as saying, put this there, put that there,
Yeah.
and suddenly the whole energy of the room changes, since people find it harder to get their mind around it,
Yeah.
because they're like, that's all, how can that be? Well,
Well, you
yet we
did.
know, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, as you're saying, like you're making reference to what we call the color placement technique, which is a technique where it's using simple dots, literally, like the size of a puncher, you know, placed in the right place, found with the pendulum tools that we use in a room. In that place, they create a certain vortex of energy that balances out the whole room, essentially. This, incidentally, is the same technique that was used in many experiments, let's say in Cairo, in chicken farm experiment, where there was a dramatic production increase with literally no investment at all. Just using placement of
Another story is growing huge chickens. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that from a biogeometry perspective for me is how much research is done into it. It's not like, oh, well, we've got an idea and it's going to fit. There's research, and let's make sure this is valid, let's see if it works for one person around the world before we...
My first exposure to biogeometry was in 1999. I had an intuitive resonance with subjects like sacred geometry, etc. So when I remember on Reuters service I read a story about an international story about the works of Dr. Karim, especially related to the hepatitis projects in Cairo, which had amazing effects, where just the power of shape, people being exposed to certain shapes in their life actually had more effect on the hepatitis than the top drugs at the time had. I remember reading that and being totally sold by the subject. And when I later had the fortune to read Dr. Karim and train with him, again, one of the things that convinced me further was to realize how much investment of research there was. This wasn't some new age subject or anything like that. Dr. Karim thinks like a scientist, like an architect, like, you know, and there is a solid backing behind everything that we teach. Not only a solid backing in terms of the paradigm, the explanation, even the science behind it, but even in terms of the experiments. Many experiments have been done, more exciting ones around the corner. I can't announce them because they haven't been officially announced, but amazing results which, you know, if adopted, can really bring about significant changes in the lifestyle of people, which we hope can be implemented.
What's been the most dramatic way that biogeometry's changed your life?
Actually, I would say that probably the most impactful aspect of biogeometry has been the paradigm, the worldview that it gives. It's not some you know, dramatically esoteric worldview, but it's one that considers not just separate things, but consider the concepts of qualities, where we see everything as a quality. A quality meaning like one musical note is a different quality from another musical note. Because when you take that paradigm, which is based on what we call the physics of quality, amazingly, it's like everything that we experience in life, from the natural phenomena that science studies, from our own perception of things, from things like, for instance, healing abilities. When we hear of people who have unusual healing abilities, when it comes to studying ancient wisdom and unraveling the mysteries, the many mysteries that exist about different buildings, different structures, things like that. Everything comes together in one holistic whole. It's I fondly like to refer to it as a theory of everything. You know, the theory of everything is the holy grail of has been the holy grail of science to come up with a theory that explains all the different forces that science is. Well, I'm not saying it from an academic scientific point of view, but in terms of an experiential everyday life, it's really, as you know, it's a theory of everything. That everything you've ever learned or can learn, especially even some of the holistic sciences that I know today. There are many holistic therapists who visit our courses. Everything fits into one big whole, and you can learn cross applicability of these laws. You know, what you learn to do with biogeometry for one aspect, you can learn to do it for another, and it works equally well. It's beautiful in that respect, very applicable, and that is something that has impacted me a lot.
The one thing that from talking to everyone at the end of today was was like everybody was so touched by this course. You know, not just for the meeting like-minded people and hanging out with us, of course. But you know, they've all got something that they can go away and tangibly implement to change their lives and the people that are coming into contact with them. So
I think when you said touched, it's really very much the right word, because after 6 days of working together and discussing things, answering questions, laughing together, and seeing the amazement of things unfolding, especially as people come to give their feedback on having tried the techniques at home. Sometimes it's not for the first day, but have got a couple of amazing stories. But yes, I'm actually quite touched by the feedback people give when they come to you and they look you in the eye and say, this has been one of the most impactful things I've ever met. That really especially gives a certain satisfaction. And it really is a subject that is not a subject just of the mind, it's a subject of the heart, because we learn things through the mind, but we apply them to the heart, really. That's what biogeometry is about. I like to call it about bringing points of light into our life, and that really is what it is. So yes, touching is the right word.
yeah, because we've all been into homes or offices or buildings that have actually put some thought into it all.
Yes.
And you feel at home and you feel that kind of nice homely environment, and you can walk into a space and just really feel at home. And for me, that's what biogeometry feels like. It's kind of like coming home.
Yes.
But you get that in churches and other places that have been built with
That feeling, yes.
and
Well, invariably, the majority of these kind of places that you're saying are from a certain ancient time, because the ancients clearly had mastered certain principles, which, a bit sadly, we have lost in the modern world. So, for instance, we were discussing this with some of the architects we had today here, and Dr. Karim, as the founder, always says this, that there is this misconception even today that architect, for instance, is a builder of walls. The architect isn't a builder of walls. The architect ultimately is a sculptor of space, because we do not live in the walls of a building, we live in space.
Yeah.
So ultimately the walls, and therefore the shape of the building, the exact size, proportions, the way it's made, should all be aimed towards one simple, straightforward objective: to create an amenable space, a space that is not just pleasant, but actually a space that brings harmony, that can even heal.
yeah.
I was very intrigued, and in fact we heard it together when we heard the video, that video I showed of Dr. Karim's interview. I was struck by the way he said it. He said that, strictly speaking, he said, the first line of healers, as it were, should be the architects, because if you design a house with the right principles, which the ancients have embraced for a long time, that house brings you harmony, which reflects onto your physical state, your mental state, and therefore, from then on, any medical treatment you are having to do is literally to repair the mistake.
Yeah.
Because if you're living in a holistic way, then you will not need treatment. Unfortunately today, another unfortunate thing, but it's part of reality, is that, as you know, we live in a world that's full of stressors. We have stresses environmental, we have hectic lifestyle, many cities are densely populated, and all kinds of things. And also we are inundated with electromagnetic radiation. This is one of the problems that the wireless age, the age of communication has brought us.
It's wonderful to have the connection and the information at our fingertips, but it does come with
It comes with a price, a hefty price tag, because, and in fact, to make it clear, in biogeometry we do not say, let's try to change this, because it's entrenched in a world, business, life depends on it. But now if we have to live with it, if I have to live in a situation where if I turn on my mobile phone, I see 10 providers. If I turn on the Wi-Fi, sometimes in the middle of a city you can get 20, even more Wi-Fi. All of these, we have to realize that all of these are actually placing heavy strain on our system.
They're bombarding it, but we can't see it, so we don't think it's there.
That is one of the most important factors, that human beings, we're intelligent, we're very resourceful. We can perceive a threat and respond to it. We have down the years. The world is still here despite all the threats that we had. But this one is slightly different because nobody perceives it as a threat. And even on the official level, we are told about, oh, the levels are safe, etc. There isn't yet perception of the real threat of this. And yet, more and more studies are coming to light which show direct correlations between very serious disease, very serious health issues, and situation of electronic magnification. So thankfully, biogeometry at least offers some solutions because, as you know, the qualities we create through biogeometry, the harmonizing qualities of nature, provide a very good way in which we can help adapt to this because electromagnetism affects us on this, what we call the subtle energy levels of our body. But biogeometry helps to fortify that and actually even nullify much of this effect. Effectively, we talk about transmuting the qualities. So this doesn't affect the signals around you, but it affects the impact they have on you. So effectively, you can still be using your mobile phone, your Wi-Fi, be in it, whether we like it or not. Let's face it, right? Yeah, there's hardly any point not having a phone today because you're still saturated in it. But thankfully, you can have this effect nullified. It was quite fascinating, wasn't it, when we demonstrated that effect with the kinesiology test, where we could show with feedback the huge impact that somebody's mobile phone had, which severely lessened the signals, the speed of signals from their brain and their strength. And yet, when we use the phone treated with biogeometry, it was all back to normal. But it amazed me. It's quite amazing me. I mean, I know it, but once you see it, yes, it's quite amazing to see that the only difference between the person's arm being weak in the kinesiology test, which many people I know are familiar with, is simply that one phone is treated, the other one isn't. So treated with biogeometry, by putting shapes in it.
It was nice to see that.
Yes, it was.
Because the thing for me is that it's not fighting all of this. It's finding a way of working with it and harmonizing the energy. So it's actually doing us good. As opposed to harming the immune system in the body.
That is a very good way of putting it. And let's face it, doesn't make sense fighting. In fact, it's not even a word that comes into our vocabulary. Biogeometry, is it? It doesn't make sense. Firstly, because it's here and it's here to stay, apparently. And secondly, there's no point in creating conflict. So rather than conflict, we simply say, okay, let's transmute, let's add, superimpose certain qualities that provide harmony, that come from nature itself. And without going into complications, these are transcendental qualities that aren't just vibrations on the physical level, but have ramifications on higher, more important levels that affect us on all levels of our being. This is why in ancient times the architect was the philosopher, was the healer, was the priest. So all of these were conglomerated really into, or at least these people all drew on the same principles that link everyone in the universe, principles that link us with our source, link us with each other. And unfortunately, with the development of the rational left brain, so to speak, mankind went on a journey where he began to see the separation. We see separation, not unity. Okay? But hopefully biogeometry will help people to restore a little bit of that unity and bring harmony to their lives in a very real and amazing way.
It would be so exciting to be able to walk into any building, so community buildings, hospitals, schools, and have them set up in a way that's harmonising and healing to the people going into that space every day.
Yes, absolutely.
Probably be full of cats.
Absolutely. It's a comment I actually often receive when I have people learning biogeometry or getting some items and using them in this way, that they often begin to notice, not immediately, but then it begins to become clear that the reaction of people sometimes to their home on a certain level, or even their own feelings, they begin to realize that there is more harmony, there is more balance, and people are more attracted. Sometimes, as you're saying, animals, we love animals, not just because we love animals, but animals in biogeometry are amazing because they offset the idea that all of this is placebo. As expected, and it's understandable, very often you talk about some experiments done and people say, oh well, it's a placebo. People are thinking there's something special, then yes, they're going to heal from their hepatitis or whatever the experiments were. But there have been, as you know, many animals, like the animal husbandry or the agriculture, where placebo doesn't come into it, you know, where an experiment with an orchard of apples or
Yeah.
sweet potatoes or chickens, there's no placebo
Yeah.
involved. So that's the beauty of
Yeah.
it. I mean, as you know, even from the history of biogeometry, Dr. Cunning has even worked with bacterial cultures,
Yeah.
significantly affecting their rate of growth, even just to using biogeometry
Yeah.
shapes on the petri dish.
Yeah.
And you know, there are still reports by the head of research, for instance, in Cairo University, saying we have no idea how this is done, but it obviously merits further research, etc. I don't think there was placebo involved with bacteria. At least the last we heard, they don't impress themselves much easily with.
Yeah, they're not interested in what the neighbours think.
No, no, they don't.
Yeah, I think when I first introduced biogeometry tools into my house, when I had my cats, they came and sat and they wanted to be in that space, and I was like, oh, okay, there we go. There's
Yes,
there's
yes.
evidence for me that there's something going
Yes,
on.
it's quite something when you see that, isn't it? Although, of course, you know, down the years you kind of get used to it, using them yourself and all that, but when you see animals sometimes
Yeah.
respond, it's really quite different.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Eloise, and well, thanks for talking about the subject. It's a subject I have a
Yeah, you're very passionate about it. We could talk all day.